You're listening to the PR Wind Down Podcast, the show for public relations professionals who are ready to see real change in the PR industry. We are your hosts, April White and Laura Schooler. Let's get ready to wind down. Okay, I have a serious question for you.
Yeah.
Have you seen Crazy Ex-Girlfriend?
I'm not sure. Why?
Because it's amazing. It's not new.
I might have.
Okay, if you haven't seen it, you have to watch it. So it's made by Rachel Bloom, who stars as Rebecca Bunch. From what I understand, wrote the script, stars in it, and wrote all the music. And before you write it off because you're like, I can't listen to a fucking musical as a television series, you have to give it a chance because the musical numbers are so hilarious.
Oh, really? Okay.
So freaking hilarious.
I don't think I've seen it then. That doesn't sound familiar. I'm thinking of a different show.
It's just so good. Yeah, so she sings the songs herself that she wrote in the show she wrote that she stars in. And you're just like, this woman is a force of nature and so wicked smart and so freaking talented.
What channel or whatever is it on?
You can watch it on Netflix. Looks like Apple TV also has it for free.
Yeah, I don't have
and then you can get it on Amazon Prime. You have to pay.
Even if you have Prime?
Google Play has it too, but you have to pay, and YouTube has it. You can buy a season for $20.
They want me to watch, they got to pay me. No, I will. I'll try to find it on Netflix.
You have to watch it. It's hilarious. I don't even know why that just became the thing that I had to talk about, but it's amazing. Like, so fun. I'm rewatching it right now. I've already seen it. Okay. Anyway, how have you been? What's new?
Since we last spoke, so much has happened. So much.
I'm finally healthy again.
That's good. I had allergies or a cold, and I'm not sure. Allergies are really bad here. So I didn't really go to the gym for a while.
Hard. Yeah. I was sick for so long I couldn't work out until a few days ago. And then I didn't realize how much I had lost. Because I still, take the dogs for hikes and stuff.
I know, it's hard to get back in it.
But it was suddenly like, oh my God, I'm doing 180-degree like squat jumps. Like, like you feel like so old all of a sudden. Like,
yes.
I can't. I was able to do this 4 weeks ago. Like, my God.
Yeah, I boxed in the park with my trainer this weekend, and then yesterday I went to the gym and I do sit-ups on the the yoga ball, so you're breaking the plane backwards.
Yeah,
and then to the one side and to the other side. And today I'm like, oh my God,
you're hilarious.
But yeah, I feel it like crazy, and I did front lunges holding like 12.5 pounds in each hand, and I feel it.
Your glutes.
The front of my thighs.
Oh,
and maybe
your
the
quads.
back, but the front of my, A few weeks ago, I was holding 30-pound weights and doing backwards lunges and didn't feel a thing the next day. It's good though, because then you worked out enough where it wasn't just
true.
BS. Like you actually pushed yourself.
Oh, I was actually in shape before. This is inspiring.
Well, I wouldn't say that. At least I know that I didn't just call in the workout that I did yesterday. I actually did something enough that my body has responded. Funny. What can you do when I just turned a new age? It's like, the fact that I'm still alive is half the battle.
Oh, come on. You're not that old. All right. On that sour note, let's get into PR related news. So we have a pretty interesting article. At least I found it very interesting. Mm-hmm. It's about how people often keep getting put back into toxic workplaces after they escape one. It's like out of the frying pan into the fryer, or whatever they say. I've done that. I have definitely done that. I'm sure you've done that. I'm sure almost everybody has done that. And the funny thing, this article is about how you repeat these cycles, just like you do with bad relationships, you do with bad agencies, where you
bad
think,
jobs or bad companies or bad bosses.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, cool. I'm going to just jump to the next one and to the next. But then eventually you realize you're the common denominator, and which isn't to say it's your fault, but it is to say that you're continuing to attract the same things to you on some subconscious level, even if you aren't doing it actively.
Well, and also
find yourself stuck. this pattern.
I think what it was also saying is that it sort of cross-pollinates between your personal and your professional life. So if you have this issue in your
Personally.
personal life, it's likely to carry over into professional. And I read the article and I sent it to a friend of mine who we talk about this kind of stuff with. And she asked me, is this new information to you? Or is this confirming or reaffirming what you already knew? And I said, at this point in my life, it is confirming. But it reminded me how unaware I was of it. And it took me back to a certain job for some reason. Like I've had many jobs that were probably toxic, but it took me back to a certain one.
Yeah.
And I had no idea. I had no idea that my personal life had issues. I knew that the job was toxic and the person I worked for was a nightmare. I knew that. And I knew it even before I took the job. And I also knew that the relationship I was in was a little bit nuts. It wasn't horrible. It was just a little nuts. But I didn't understand that all of this. And like you said, I don't want to
No,
blame myself.
it's not like your fault, but
it was me making the decisions and being guided by forces that I wasn't aware of. Things that trauma or whatever you want to call it that you had as a younger person that you bring, and even trauma of your parents or your grandparents that follow through because nobody takes care of that.
100%. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's going from your personal life into your work life and back and forth. And it takes a long time to figure it out, man.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was that, especially because I didn't connect the two, I was just thought and taught, you have a job and it's supposed to be hard and it's supposed to be crappy and people are mean and you just have to fight through that crap and just go to work every day. That's your job, is to go to work every day. And if you get treated like crap, oh, well, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is that I worked at an agency where there was a boss that was probably, and I'm not saying this to be dramatic, I think probably bipolar.
Right.
And as a result, sometimes very jovial and fun, and then other times terrifying. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I have friends who have that, and it's not that we're not making fun of that. That's a very serious thing, and it's hard to navigate, and drugs can help and whatever. This is not trying to be glib about about that topic because it's not something to joke about. But the point is not that. The point is that the people that worked there, myself included, all seem to have some abuse in their past. And so there was this broken part of them that was coming to the table feeling like this is okay to be treated this way. And so it was an entire department filled with people like myself who had similar broken pieces that were able to click in, because anybody who didn't have that pathway would never have worked there.
Right. It's so interesting how that
never
happens in life. So I've heard the argument that many PR people are like that. So it's not just this certain group of PR people, but many PR people are willing to take sort of the abuse because they're trying to please their boss, their client, their whatever all the time, no matter how much abuse that they get. They don't see it as abuse. They see it as, they got to get it done, or they'll do better, or whatever it is. They don't just say, I'm out of here. Or like we just said, it's not that they're not even going to end up there at all. They ended up in PR to begin with.
Yeah. And then the problem is that just perpetuates the cycle because you have a bunch of people working there that have the same issues.
Yep. So nobody says to you, this is crazy and you need to say no. Everybody's fighting to resolve some unresolved
100%.
stuff.
And it's also that weird dynamic where, in a family where you have one parent that you just let be as fill in the blank as possible, right?
Crazy, impossible, whatever. Yeah.
However you want to phrase it, because everyone's got one. And then you have the other parent who sings back up to that parent. And so what would happen in that scenario is everyone's singing back up to the crazy parent, but you can't rock the boat because then you're basically in everyone's psychology, you're then about to get put on the spit because you just called on the carpet the parent nobody's ever supposed to call on the carpet.
Right.
Because they get by with anything. So it's this weird group hypnosis thing that happens. And if you try to break out the crab in the bucket trying to crawl out, they all claw you back in.
Right.
Oh, how dare you do the scary thing that none of us would ever dare do.
Right.
So it's a really weird thing, and it takes a very long time, I think, to get out of that. And the sad thing I've seen is that I've seen people try to break out of that and land somewhere where they're not mistreated, but they somehow don't know how to exist in a functional
Yeah.
work environment because they've only had the other. And so
And
they,
their
they
personal life too.
so they either try to drag that back into the water or like
Yeah.
put it back in the water. And you're like, oh, I thought we were freeing you from this. And we both wanted that. But then they're poisoning the pond on accident. Or I've had them not know how to self motivate because they're only motivated by people screaming at them.
Yeah.
Right. And I've also seen people who invent scenarios to reinforce their toxic psychology. So they'll come to a healthy place, but then they end up inventing the story in their head about the people around them that ultimately matches exactly the story you heard when they came to you and they needed a new job because they just reinvented the same trauma and then projected it onto you and said, this is the reality that I'm experiencing that you've created, even though
Right. It's not a
it's
reality.
not a reality and they're actually making it one.
Yes, so anyway, this article that
It's
talks
great.
about it's super hard because it's super scary for, well, first of all, you don't even know what's happening when you're young, right?
Mm-mm.
And then you kind of start to realize that it's happening, but you don't know what to do about it, or it's very scary because you think that if you actually say no mas, that you're going to be jobless and homeless for the rest of your life or whatever. It's just clinging on to the only floating thing in the North Atlantic or whatever, right? It's super scary to take your talons off. I mean, personal or professional, but if you start doing it somewhere, I think that then it helps to heal that, and then it'll help to heal the rest
Mhm.
also.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we're not professional trained, whatever,
No,
but
no, no, and it's all a process, like, nobody should ever beat themselves up for this, and usually it's at least in my experience, you get incrementally better at it, you don't just overnight end up in a healthy environment or a healthy
yeah,
relationship. Depending on where you're coming from, it's like, as long as you're going in the right direction, like, the next relationship is slightly less toxic, and the next job is slightly less like I said, you're not gonna just all of a sudden be like, "I'm healed, now I work or I'm
right,
in a totally functional relationship with the man of my that's not how it works.
yeah,
It's bit by bit by bit by bit. You got
yeah,
to slog through it to the other side. And then eventually it's like you appreciate it's never going to be perfect because everybody has their own stuff that's unresolved even if they're working at it. Everybody has their moments, but this is also why I talk a lot about how important it is as a business owner, business leader or executive to make sure that your shit isn't rolling downhill
hmm,
because you also then are going to attract to you whatever. So if you are somebody that has tendencies towards being verbally abusive to other people, the people that will come and stay with you will be people that have a reciprocal in for that, right? So like they're going to have some kind of trauma that matches it. So it's like the more whole and self-aware and sort of self-preserved and self-contained and self like, not to say you have to be autonomous, but like as much as you can keep your own psychological garbage in your own container and not
hmm,
let it spill out, the less that other people are then going to either need that or bring their own to the table because then
yeah,
things just get really messy. So it is really, really important. They say, if you're a business owner, you got to make time for your health and stuff. I mean, this is arguably almost more important
hmm,
than your physical health is making sure that your mental health and psychology are as clean as possible so that you don't amplify them through every layer of personnel or employees you add
yeah.
underneath you. Otherwise, you're just building on like a toxic waste site.
Right. Well, for you, you left that world to build your own world that wasn't like that. And if you kept repeating that same pattern, then you would have just become what you wanted to get away from, right?
And then I have my own stuff in the other direction that, I have to backfill for too and make sure I don't perpetuate. So it's like, but mostly that hasn't been an issue, but in large part because I attracted Lana, who has better boundaries than I do.
The best boundaries in the business, Lana.
She basically now insulates me from stuff that I would otherwise make a mess out of.
It took me a long time.
It does.
But
Yeah. So anybody who wants to read this article, we'll put it in the show notes, but it's in Fast Company in the mindfulness at work section, and it's called Keep Winding Up in a Toxic Workplace. Here's how to break the cycle. Great read and something great to think about and, be introspective about. So with that, should we read our horror story of the day?
yeah, maybe you should, because I think you haven't, because you couldn't speak for the past
18 months. Isn't it weird talking to me healthy?
You did a good job of pushing through, so it was never
You
a
couldn't
huge.
tell how bad it was?
I mean, I knew that one. I think when we were talking to Aaron Quicken, your voice was bad, but that was it.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this says do not open till podcast. Hi, April and Laura. I'm struggling with my client announcements lately. I think everyone in our industry knows that newsrooms are understaffed and utterly slammed with pitches, and we've been living in, quote, unprecedented times for years. I run into an issue a handful of times now where I'll schedule and plan a client announcement carefully. Then at the last second, some once in a lifetime national news story breaks and derails the coverage I normally think I could have gotten. For example, last fall, I had a client with an instant messaging app and we were doing the product launch announcement. I started pitching under embargo. And the next day, Elon Musk bought Twitter. I pushed back the announcement a week, but at that point, I barely got any coverage. The tech beats were swamped with the Musk news, and I think my client's announcement just couldn't compete with that. Client was sympathetic, but clearly annoyed. I keep running into this issue, and similar situations have happened to me a few times in the last couple of years. I feel like it's just harder and harder to get coverage and to avoid disappointing my clients or down talking my ability to get good press as a means of like managing expectations. With the election cycle ramping back up in the US, I'm just feeling defeated and a bit lost on how I can be timing my clients' announcements better as we enter another busy news season. No flashy story here, more a cry for help. How are you guys handling this? Thanks. B. Oh, we got a sign off. B.
Breaking news is not new. So it's not a new thing. Is it maybe a more current recent thing? I don't know. Maybe I can't say. I didn't scientifically, figure it out. But you can't stop being a PR person because of that, right? So when those things happen, and I see that you push the announcement a week, in a case
Yeah.
like that, if it's seriously like specifically head on with the breaking news that happened, like the same reporters and the same publications on the similar topic, I think that you probably should have pushed it back longer than that and told the client, seriously, this is the most well-known businessman on the planet, and he just bought the most well-known social, media platform on the planet, and that we're really going to have to push this for 2 weeks or 3 weeks because reporters are just not going to focus on it.
Yeah.
With other kinds of breaking news, if it's like, the unfortunate school shooting or things like that happen, if you're not in the same column or publications, it usually is okay. And if it's something that's maybe similar but not the same, you can suggest pushing it off a few days,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And if the client says, no, 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 we have to go out on Monday because that's when everything else is launching, then you just do what you can do. And I mean, there's really nothing more you can do about it at that point. If you are demanded by your client to send news out in a storm of other things that you can't fight against, there's nothing more you can do but just do your best.
Yeah, it's really tricky. I actually just wrote an article about this for PR News because there was the like Biden announcing his reelection, and it was another example. I mean, it wasn't quite as big as when COVID took over the news cycles or
Mm-hmm.
BLM. Like there are other things that sort of dominate for weeks at a time, but there is still something really tricky about if something like that breaks the same day you're trying to pitch, then you have to know when do you manage expectations with your client and tell them you have to push, and when are you free to do it. And I think one of the main things that you have to consider is, are you pitching the reporters who are covering it?
Right.
Like in this case, it's a good example where it's a social media company that she's representing, or he, her, him, I don't know. And it's social media driven, which means anything about Twitter and Elon Musk screwed,
Right.
because any of those reporters are busy writing about that. And I think to your point, Laura, you would have to wait at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 or 4 before that dies down enough because there was so much fallout from that.
Yeah.
If it's something urgent like that, that has to go through anyway, I mean, you just gotta let your client know, like, you're not set up for success in this case.
Right.
But I think with, like, political stuff, for example, this person's worried about I mean, if you unless you have political clients, I
Right.
wouldn't worry so much about that because
I
anybody
agree.
covering the election is probably not covering social media unless it's a crossover reporter that is writing about how trends on social media are
Right.
impacting
Or how Donald Trump is using social media
right.
or
And then
whatever.
you're or like he
Right.
started his own social media platform as
Right.
part of his 2024 whatever.
Right.
So you just can't
But I feel like that might just be part of the news or just a day or two of news, but not like an Elon
right.
Musk level. Yeah.
And then the other thing to consider is just whether you seem tone deaf. Even if, for example, let's say you're pitching a brand new lipstick color, but it's the same day that you found out there was a mass shooting in Texas and something horrible happened. You might want to just wait a day just so you don't look oblivious. Like, I've had this happen before, even where I showed up to a meeting. I'm like, hey, how's everybody doing? How's your day going? And I didn't know yet that horrible thing happened. And you can look very tone deaf, which is partly why we have at our agency breaking news every morning that comes through. So nobody's shows up at work and starts
Clueless.
working and like drinking coffee without having seen that, there was an invasion of a country or like something,
Yeah.
something you need to know. So I think it's just good as a PR person to just stay aware of where everyone's mind and heart is at any given day to make sure you aren't looking oblivious, tone deaf, or otherwise insensitive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That's a good one. I mean, it's a good story. It's not a good situation, but I think this person can feel better knowing that there are still pockets of ways to do this without getting derailed every time. I think you just have your finger on the pulse of society and the news cycle and figure out where you can slide in between.
Find different reporters.
Yeah. Or look for people that, don't cover Twitter or whatever.
Right.
Pretty impossible. So Laura,
Yes.
I want to do a sponsor us today.
Oh, okay.
So I discovered this very cool platform called Charger GoGo when I was in Las Vegas
All right.
because I didn't bring the proper charger with me. So my phone was on, I don't know, 10% battery and I was supposed to be out for the whole day. So I went to this restaurant and I was like, "Hey, do you have a place where I can charge my phone? I know this is really weird, but anything you can do." "Oh, yeah. If you go to the coffee shop around the corner, they have Charger GoGo." And I was like, "What?" Turns out there's a system through all of Las Vegas where you can rent a charger by the hour that's just like this big. You attach your phone to it, has like a plug for any kind of phone, and then you can just carry that around, and whenever your phone's charged to your satisfaction, you can put it back at any of the other locations.
And it stops charging you if it's by the hour or whatever.
Yeah.
Are they sucking all of your personal and private data out of your phone through that wire?
I mean, I hope not. If they are,
Oh.
then they've got a really killer model going on. No, it was
But
like
so
it
it
was
saves your
it saved my and I was like, "This is so smart. What a great way to make money." Especially in a city like Vegas where
right. Right. Right.
you're running around doing God knows what, and like, when was the last time you remembered to charge your phone?
Right.
You know?
Yes, you're either at a conference working or you've been gambling all night or doing Lord knows what. Yeah.
Hmm. So it was super cool. I just thought it was a really innovative idea. With so many locations, it's like you could just wander around with it. You weren't stuck charging your phone, right? You can like
Right.
pick
Or
it
you
up.
didn't have to go back to like the
Yeah.
hotel 2 miles away. You could
Right. You can
just
like go get a drink somewhere and then be like, "Hey, now my phone's charged," and like look for the next location with the slot
nice.
and then just slot it back in. That's it.
And
So
then win the
easy.
jackpot. Yay.
That's not how it worked out for me, but
Oh,
I appreciate
it
you.
should have been. Look, I'm like
Yeah.
slumped in.
Yeah. All right. I think it's time for a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to the PR Wind Down podcast today.
Remember to submit your own agency stories and questions and share our show with your friends and colleagues. If you subscribe and leave us a rating, it will also help us reach new listeners like you.
And if you have an anonymous PR horror story of your own, please send it our way at the contact email below the episode notes.
Can't wait to wind down with you again next time. Oh, it's so cute. We did it in concert.